Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a mission, a blueprint really, for what you could call a global restructuring of how we understand life on our own planet.
And that blueprint comes from a project called DocuPlay. The whole premise is, well, it's stunning when you first hear it.
It really is.
After all this time, centuries of science, the huge majority of life on Earth is still a complete mystery to us. DocuPlay actually uses the word astonishing to describe where we're at.
And astonishing is exactly the right word. I mean, you look at the figures DocuPlay puts forward, and human knowledge only covers something like 14% of all living species.
Right.
So that means 86% of life on Earth is, uncatalogued, unanalyzed. It's just out there, and it could hold massive, massive untapped value.
Exactly. And this isn't just about filling in an inventory. It's a huge oversight, like you said, when you think about the potential benefits just waiting to be discovered.
So that's the gap.
That is the gap. And DocuPlay saw this huge unmapped territory and basically designed a complete integrated strategy to tackle it head-on. It's a really comprehensive approach, using digital tools, mass education, and a pretty innovative economic structure.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack that DocuPlay strategy piece by piece. First, we'll get into the sheer urgency that's driving this whole plan.
The why now?
Exactly. Then we'll get into the foundations, the technology behind it all, especially this application of the network effect and 5G connectivity.
Which is a fascinating part of the plan.
It really is. And finally, we'll trace their whole methodology, this very structured 6-phase process that takes something from a sample in the field all the way to a protected, commercialized asset that, ideally benefits the whole planet.
From field to market.
Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start at the beginning with the scale of the problem. DocuPlay's whole motivation seems to come from this realization that our traditional way of doing science just can't solve this problem in time. What are the numbers that really define this crisis of knowledge?
The numbers are, they're pretty stark.
Yeah.
And they really do provide the justification for DocuPlay's, very radical approach. We've managed to index about 1.2 million species so far.
Which sounds like a lot on its own.
It does, until you hear the next number. Researchers estimate there are at least 7.5 million species still out there, just waiting to be described, analyzed, and understood.
Wow, so we're not even a quarter of the way there.
Not even close. And when you look at it globally, DocuPlay's analysis shows we've only covered about 14% of land species. And get this, only 9% of species in the ocean.
9%. The ocean is still basically an unknown frontier.
It's largely terra incognita, absolutely.
Right.
And it holds just immense biodiversity.
And DocuPlay points out this imbalance, right, across the different biological kingdoms. It feels like our focus hasn't been very systematic.
Not at all. We've put a huge amount of effort into some areas and, well, a lot less into others. For instance, DocuPlay highlights that we know about 70% of the plant kingdom.
Okay, that's a pretty strong base.
It is. But that knowledge just falls off a cliff in other domains.
Yeah.
We only know about 50% of algae, 22% of protozoa, and just 12% of the entire animal kingdom.
12% of animals. That's shocking.
It is. But the most significant gap, and you could argue the one with the greatest untapped potential, is the fungi kingdom. We only know a staggering 7% of fungi.
7%.
Yes.
That disparity isn't just an academic footnote, is it? It must dictate exactly where DocuPlay plans to focus its resources.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
DocuPlay makes a very specific point about this. The number of cataloged plant species is 7 times higher than the number for animals and 10 times higher than for fungi.
10 times.
So that means we have this huge, vast frontier of organisms like fungi that are just fundamentally crucial to how our global ecosystems work, and we know almost nothing about them.
So let's talk about that untapped potential, because this is where the mission really shifts from just pure science to something more like a critical global resource quest. What are we losing by ignoring 93% of all fungi?
Well, DocuPlay quotes experts on this, and it's a powerful point. Of the roughly 100,000 fungi we do know, only about 1% are responsible for all these critical functions we rely on.
Okay, what kind of functions?
Things like decomposition, cycling nutrients through the soil, providing food sources, and of course giving us essential medicines like penicillin.
So all of that comes from just 1% of the known fungi.
1% of the 7% we know about, yeah. So that tiny, tiny fraction already provides such fundamental value. You just have to imagine the potential that's locked away in the millions of species we haven't even described yet.
It's mind-boggling.
It is. And DocuPlay's argument is that these unknown species, They could hold the keys to entirely new medicines, new ways to control diseases, new materials, even new ways to support ecosystems that are struggling. The potential loss is it's incalculable.
The urgency is definitely clear, but it begs the question, why has this problem been around for so long? If the benefit is that huge, there must be a bottleneck somewhere that's stopping traditional science.
The bottleneck is all about speed, scale, and specialization. DocuPlay's analysis is pretty sobering here. Using traditional methods, relying on a small pool of specialized taxonomists, slow lab work, localized efforts, they calculate that describing the rest of the species could take up to 1,200 years.
1,200 years? I mean, that's a completely unacceptable timeline when you think about climate change and how fast we're losing biodiversity.
It's totally unacceptable. And the resources needed are just as massive. The traditional way would cost around $364 billion and require the work of 303,000 professional taxonomists all working at the same time.
So it's too slow and too expensive.
Way too slow. It means countless species will just go extinct before we ever discover them, let alone analyze what they could do for us. And DocuPlay's main finding here is that the cause of this slowness is the shortage of specialists.
So it's a people problem.
It's a human resources problem. The bottleneck isn't the organisms themselves, it's the lack of trained people to identify and study them. The entire DocuPlay project is built around solving that one problem through mass education and technology.
Okay, so you can't overcome a 1,200-year timeline with just small adjustments. DocuPlay clearly recognized that this needed a whole new foundation built on digital scale and, global connectivity.
Exactly. And that's why their first foundational pillar, what they call the power of the network effect, is so important. They've essentially taken Metcalfe's law.
Which is the idea that a network's value grows exponentially with the number of users, right?
That's the one. The value of a phone network or the internet. They've applied that law directly to the quality of specialized scientific training.
That's a brilliant conceptual leap. But how does that work in practice? How do you get that geometrical growth in an educational setting?
The core mechanism is actually pretty simple. Collaboration is what drives the exponential improvement. So as the number of students taking DocuPlay's courses grows arithmetically, one by one, the quality and the depth of those courses will grow geometrically worldwide.
Because the students aren't just consumers of the information.
They're producers. That's the key.
So say a student creates some new content, a great analysis, a really sharp comment, a new observation. How does the system take that individual input and use it for everyone?
If that content gets highly rated or validated by their peers in the system, it's automatically offered to all the other students in similar courses across the globe.
And that happens instantly.
Instantly. This is so important because it means the core curriculum is constantly being updated with cutting-edge research and real-time breakthroughs that are generated by the students themselves. The system is always learning and improving.
And DocuPlay has this clever way of encouraging people to share, right? It gets around that old fear of a scientist, training their own professional rival.
Absolutely. The whole system is designed to be deeply altruistic, precisely because it's global. So if you're a specialist training in, say, Spain, and your peer is in Colombia, and you're both studying the exact same course.
Which because they're numerically coded?
Precisely. The system uses advanced machine translation to instantly share your valuable input with them. That numerical coding gives it what DocuPlay calls transidiomatic reliability.
That's a great term.
It is. It standardizes all the scientific concepts and metrics. So when your input is translated from Spanish to English or Portuguese, the scientific meaning is guaranteed. You can benefit your global peers immediately without any fear that you're creating a direct competitor in your local area.
So the knowledge base is basically self-optimizing and globally distributed. That's the network effect in action.
That's it.
But a system like that needs a huge amount of digital support, which brings us to the second pillar: infrastructure and connectivity.
Yeah, the DocuPlay is very clear about this. The whole mission is enabled by advanced tech. The absolute core requirement is a stable, permanent internet connection, and specifically 5G connectivity wherever they can get it.
And everyone involved needs the right tools.
Dual devices, a rugged mobile device for capturing data in the field in real time, and a PC for the deeper analysis in the virtual labs.
Why is 5G so critical? Why is that the thing that helps shrink that 1,200-year timeline?
Because 5G exponentially multiplies the connection capacity and speed, Yeah. It dramatically reduces latency, the lag time, and that means you can have a massive number of synchronous actions happening all at once across the network.
So everyone is on a level playing field, technologically speaking.
No one is at a disadvantage, regardless of their location or, their country's economic background. For this project to work, DocuPlay relies heavily on 5G to boost the Internet of Things, the IoT.
To get all the devices talking to each other.
All the devices, the samples, the databases, all communicating in real time.
And all of that, the 5G, the IoT, the perfected machine translation, it all comes together to create the actual work environment for these new specialists, the virtual laboratories.
Precisely. With IoT, you can have countless virtual labs that aren't tied to a physical building. These online spaces are where the search engines, the taxonomists, the analysts do their work. This seamless, rapid connectivity is the absolute key to shrinking that millennium-long task down to just a few decades.
Okay, so we have the tech, but you need an organizational structure to manage millions of people. This is where the consortia come in, the CETs and the CIPS.
Right. The organization is very clever. It's geographically rooted. DocuPlay organizes all the research groups and operators by their postal code.
By postal code?
Yeah, the CP. It establishes a very specific territorial area of responsibility for each educational consortium, or CET. These groups are responsible for all the research inside that geographical boundary. They are the academic and discovery engines.
And the industrial consortia, the CIPs, they're the economic engine. They make sure all this discovery actually turns into something tangible.
The CIPs are essential. They're what makes the whole plan viable. They have a 5-part role. First, they analyze the potential market value of any new species.
So is it useful? Can it be commercialized?
Exactly. Second, they handle hiring of specialists, many of whom are coming straight out of the CET training programs. Third, they manage negotiations with existing scientific databases, including DNA databases, to avoid reinventing the wheel.
And finally, the money part.
The crucial part. They manage the promotion and negotiation of all the patents that come from the new discoveries. The CIPs are the bridge that ensures the scientific rigor of the CETs results in real, measurable, sustainable economic and employment benefits. So once you have those structural solutions in place, the network effect, the virtual labs, they are all designed to solve that critical shortage of specialists. The next logical step is a massive mobilization and training program.
A program focused on R+D+I, research, development, and innovation.
Right. It's incredibly ambitious. DocuPlay is talking about mobilizing hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of collaborators. And the training has to be highly specialized, using those virtual labs for hands-on experimental analysis on a global scale.
So it's not just textbook learning.
Not at all. It requires a modular approach. So DocuPlay has laid out these specialized courses for the 3 main kingdoms, animal, plant, and mineral, plus these really innovative geographical courses that ground all the research in the local environment.
Let's start with the animal kingdom. DocuPlay noted that the biggest challenge there is the sheer biodiversity of the oceans.
It's immense. So the Animal Kingdom program is designed specifically for oceanic research. The huge obstacle is just getting access to samples from the high seas without spending a fortune.
Right. You can't just send out thousands of research vessels.
It's not feasible. So DocuPlay's solution is to use strategic incentives. The plan is to offer incentives to the industrial high seas fishing companies, the very fleets that are already out there covering huge oceanic territories.
And what's the incentive?
They get incentives to contribute specimens of all their catches. Not just the fish they're targeting commercially, but everything else that comes up in the nets.
So you're turning the entire global commercial fishing fleet into a massive, cost-effective sample collection network.
You've got it. It's a brilliant way to align a commercial interest with a scientific necessity. So instead of being adversaries, the fishing companies become partners in discovery.
That's a great example of the practical thinking in this plan.
And once a new species is identified and analyzed for its utility specifically, is it edible? DocuPlay has plans for rapid, controlled cultivation. They envision raising these edible aquatic species in specialized fish farms and then commercializing them through a regulated franchise system.
So there's an immediate local economic benefit that comes directly from the discovery.
That's the goal.
Okay, moving on to the plant kingdom. Program 9. This seems very focused on practical application, moving way beyond just cataloging.
It's a 2-tiered specialization. The first tier trains specialists in the discovery and the rigorous cataloging of new plants. The second tier immediately trains them to analyze those new species.
To determine their value.
Right. Is it edible? Does it have medicinal value? What's its nutritional profile? and what does it need to be cultivated successfully. And to speed this all up, DocuPlay will actively collaborate with existing taxonomists and, crucially, botanical gardens.
Because they already have massive collections.
Huge amounts of cataloged species and DNA data. DocuPlay will provide incentives for them to integrate all that existing knowledge into the one unified database.
And this comprehensive approach also extends to the mineral kingdom, which is pretty unique for a biological rescue mission.
It's what makes the whole system self-supporting. Program 10 trains specialists to search for and analyze new uses for chemical, mineral, and geological elements, with a special focus on things like rare earths.
But the objective is very practical.
Highly practical. It's about finding new properties, discovering new alloys for scientific tools, more efficient and greener fertilizers, or innovative new medicinal products.
And the really profound connection here is that the goal for these mineral discoveries isn't just industrial, it's meant to reinforce the biological kingdoms.
Absolutely. The whole design dictates that any applications for these new mineral findings have to ultimately benefit animal and plant species. For example, a new alloy might be needed to build better tools for the virtual labs. Or a new kind of fertilizer could dramatically improve the yield of a newly cultivated medicinal plant.
So it makes the whole biosphere greener and more sustainable.
It directly supports the growth of the newly discovered biological resources.
Beyond the kingdom-specific training, DocuPlay has this really effective way of democratizing the field research, the toponymic courses.
This is really where the mass mobilization part comes to life. These courses are an incredibly innovative tool for both research and regional development. Students in these courses conduct actual investigative excursions, real field research in their own immediate natural environment.
And they're trained to investigate inch by inch these uninhabited place names.
Exactly. Leveraging their deep local knowledge to search for new species. It completely shifts the burden of discovery from some distant professional team to locally invested agents who know the territory.
It leverages local pride and expertise.
It does. And DocuPlay plans to sponsor these excursions and launch contests for things like photography, creative writing about the environment, and detailed investigative reports. It engages students, turns local curiosity into valuable global science, and gives them a real sense of ownership over their regional biodiversity.
Of course, when you have millions of people doing this, you need flawless data management to avoid duplication.
That is addressed by the core principle of the Universal Unified Database. DocuPlay knows that duplication is a massive waste of time and money.
Cataloging the same species twice.
Or repeating an analysis that's already been done. So to eliminate that, every single cataloged and analyzed specimen goes into one single, perpetually updated database. That digital control is essential. Any researcher anywhere in the world can instantly check if their finding is new before they proceed. Maximum efficiency.
Okay, so we've got the need, the tech, the trained workforce. Now let's get into the operational core of DocuPlay. This 6-phase methodology that guides a discovery from a raw sample all the way to a protected commercial asset.
This is where the blueprint really flexes its logistical muscles. It lays out a clear pathway that is so much shorter and more efficient than a traditional research pipeline.
It all starts with phase 1, field research, the moment of collection, which is instantly digitized. This relies heavily on that 5G connectivity we talked about.
It does. The phase kicks off with those guided excursions to local place names, and the digital workflow is what eliminates the redundancy from the very first second.
How does that work?
So a researcher collects a sample. They take a photo with their mobile device, and a dedicated app automatically records all the critical metadata, the exact geographic coordinates, the date, the time, the researcher's ID. All of that is instantly sent to the unified database.
And because of the high-speed connection, they can check it against existing data right there in the field.
Correct. The researcher can verify on the spot if the specimen, or even its DNA sequence, is already in the system. If it's novel, the discovery moves forward.
And DocuPlay's incentive system kicks in right away.
Immediately. Researchers get initial incentives just for passing the sample to the next stage, and they get more rewards for every successful step after that. Cataloging, analysis, patenting, cultivation, and finally, commercialization.
So phase 2 is cataloging, the formal identification.
Right. This is where a specialist has to formally describe the species based on its phenotype, all its observable physical traits, and its genotype, its detailed genetic makeup. This is what definitively distinguishes it from every other known species.
And DocuPlay helps make this efficient.
They ensure that the course content the specialists are using is permanently updated with the very latest scientific research and standardized protocols, which just makes that complex work much easier.
Then we hit phase 3, analyzing. This feels like the real pivot point, where a scientific curiosity can become a potential global asset.
It is. Analysis involves detailed experimental study in those virtual laboratories to figure out the species' specific properties. Is it edible? Does it have medicinal compounds? What are its unique nutritional quirks? And critically, what does it need to be successfully bred or cultivated?
And what's exciting about the DocuPlay model is that this isn't just for new species.
That's a great point. As these virtual labs multiply around the world through the network effect, we can go back and re-examine long-known species that were previously overlooked. We can subject them to new analyses with new tools and potentially unlock completely new properties in familiar life forms.
Okay, so once the utility is proven, we move into production. Phase 4, reproducing, and phase 5, enhancing reproduction. The focus shifts from the lab to sustainable large-scale output.
Right. If a new species is useful for food or medicine, the goal is rapid, controlled reproduction using the latest sustainable tech. And DocuPlay has a massive infrastructure component designed specifically for this, which they call the Hydrosolar project.
Hydrosolar. It sounds like a perfect synergy of infrastructure and sustainability. How does it work?
The design is really ingenious, and it relies on geography. It involves building these lower and upper twin reservoirs or dams. The lower one stores basin water and generates hydraulic energy.
Okay.
Critically, some of that energy is used to pump water up to the upper reservoir. The water in that upper reservoir is then used for the plant and animal farms, where they're cultivating the new species.
And then what happens to that water?
After it's used, it's returned to the lower reservoir, and on its way back down, it generates more hydraulic energy.
Wow, so it's a closed-loop system that generates energy on the way up and on the way down, all while watering the farm.
Exactly, and the solar component makes it even better. The surfaces of both reservoirs and the roofs of all the facilities are covered with solar panels.
Which does two things, right? More energy and less evaporation.
It dramatically increases the total energy production, making the whole operation self-sufficient while also reducing water loss, which is crucial in a lot of regions. The idea is to provide a highly stable source of water and energy for cultivating these valuable new species.
And DocuPlay notes that this model is really optimized for specific geographies.
That's right. They point out that many Ibero-American countries have unique geographical advantages for the hydrosolar model. Think of the Andean mountain range with steep elevation gradients, or places like Spain's Cantabrian Cornice. It's about harnessing the planet's natural geography to power sustainable development.
And that brings us to the final step, phase 6, commercialization. After all this science and infrastructure, how do these products actually get to market?
DocuPlay proposes a franchise system as the most appropriate method for the fish farms and plant farms. The plan is to standardize the production centers and really regulate their management to ensure quality control.
Which provides security for the franchisees and builds consumer trust.
It's exactly consistency and quality across the whole global network.
And throughout this entire 6-phase journey, DocuPlay keeps the public involved with the blog for every species.
This is a remarkable feature. It really democratizes the analysis. Once a new species is cataloged, analyzed, and approved for its food or medicinal value, DocuPlay creates a public blog for it.
And anyone can contribute.
Any member of the public can contribute comments, share information, or describe their own experiences with that species. It's a powerful, crowdsourced feedback loop for real-world application.
So people could participate in usability tests, maybe share their own cultivation tips?
They could. And crucially, if their contributions are deemed useful, if they help refine the understanding or use of the species, they can actually be paid for it. It fosters mass engagement and just speeds up the process of integrating these new discoveries into our lives. So when you look at the whole methodology, you realize DocuPlay is presenting more than just a scientific process. It's a meticulously designed economic model, one that's built for global equity and rapid sustainable development.
And DocuPlay is very firm on the point that this approach allows every country to prosper by developing its environmental sector. But the key is that the economic benefit has to mostly stay in the country where the discovery was made.
That point is absolutely foundational to the whole project. It's a kind of social contract. DocuPlay observes that so often, the countries with the richest biodiversity are the least developed economically.
The biodiversity paradox.
Right. So this blueprint represents a real unparalleled opportunity for those regions to achieve sustainable development by leveraging their natural capital intelligently.
And that, of course, translates directly into massive employment opportunities. It creates career paths for all those specialists that DocuPlay is training.
It's the guarantee. DocuPlay actively promotes entrepreneurship among its students, and they say employment is guaranteed in one of the 6 phases. The most sustainable jobs are in the later stages: protection, cultivation, breeding, and commercialization.
And the most enterprising agents can become entrepreneurs themselves.
They're specifically encouraged to opt for a franchise in the commercialization phase, so they can directly benefit from a discovery they may have helped facilitate right from the start.
Of course, the engine that drives all the investment is the patent system. DocuPlay really champions the patentability of these discoveries as a critical incentive.
The patent system is what makes the whole plan financially viable. It's what attracts the necessary large-scale investment. And DocuPlay has a very sophisticated incentive structure around it.
For the authors of the discovery.
Right. The scientific authors who did the analysis, who discovered the utility, they get full support with patent management and a guaranteed percentage of the profits for the entire life of the patent.
And the contributors get rewarded too.
The entities that contributed, like the botanical gardens or the fishing companies that provided the samples, they can also be compensated for their role.
But there's a big hurdle here. A lot of governments don't currently allow you to patent a new species, even based on its discovered value.
And DocuPlay has a plan for that, proactively. They plan to establish a vigorous lobbying service to encourage governments to update their legislation. And their argument is very nuanced and I think very compelling.
What's the argument?
They argue that they aren't trying to patent the species itself. They want to patent the discovered properties, the new food or medicinal values, which were only revealed through highly specialized experimentation.
So you're patenting the innovation, not the organism.
Exactly. You're patenting the discovery of the utility and the innovative methods required to cultivate or use it. If that thesis is adopted globally, the economic benefits will be immense. It will attract the attention of huge industries, like pharmaceutical companies, who will be very interested in acquiring the rights.
And that influx of capital just guarantees the whole cycle can continue and expand.
Right. And it all feeds back into the job market. DocuPlay suggests the environmental sector could become one of the biggest global seed beds for professions in the future.
It's an incredibly diverse range of jobs.
It is. You have the scientific core discoverers, taxonomists, analysts, but then you have all the practical roles breeders, growers, conservationists, and then all the complementary jobs builders for the hydrosolar projects, marketers, logisticians. It's a whole new economy.
It really is a beautifully constructed feedback loop. Knowledge leads to utility. Utility is protected by patents. The protection attracts investment, and the investment creates mass employment and national prosperity.
Especially in the regions that need it most. And this all leads to what might be the most profound philosophical idea in the whole plan, the concept of protection through utility.
What do they mean by that?
The blueprint concludes that the single most effective way to guarantee the protection and conservation of a species is to discover a concrete, indispensable use for it for humanity, as food, as medicine, as a resource that makes the biosphere greener. In this system, knowledge isn't just power, it's the ultimate conservation tool.
So we've just spent this time dissecting DocuPlay's really comprehensive blueprint. It's an audacious plan using the network effect, 5G, virtual labs, and this dynamic, equitable economic model to turn a 1,200-year scientific task into a decades-long global endeavor.
It's a profoundly optimistic vision, but it's also incredibly practical. It directly addresses the most critical shortages we have: time, specialized experts, and investment.
Then by focusing on that utility and ensuring the economic benefits flow back to the region of discovery.
It presents a truly sustainable solution, not just for environmental health, but for global economic uplift. It's really powerful.
The plan really does manage to integrate scientific discovery with economic incentive in a way that ensures conservation is no longer just seen as a cost, but as a crucial investment.
And that shift in perspective, that knowledge is the best form of protection, that might be the most transformative idea in the entire blueprint.
So as you reflect on this massive project, we want to leave you with a final thought. DocuPlay argues that knowledge is the ultimate guarantee of both conservation and commercial value. So what vast, untapped environmental and economic wealth might be waiting to be revealed in your own geographical area? And how quickly could unified global collaboration through a platform like DocuPlay bring that wealth and that protection to light?
The future health of our planet really is linked to our ability to rapidly leverage technology and education to complete this census of life.
A compelling call to action. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into DocuPlay's masterful blueprint.